this little old lady was driving down the road the other day, and she got pulled over by the police officer. And the police officer said, "Ma'am, may I see your driver's license?" And she looked at him and said, "Is something wrong?" He said, "Yes, ma'am, you were speeding." And she said, "Well, I don't have a driver's license." And he looked down at her and said, "What do you mean you don't have a driver's license?" She said, "I lost it due to drunk driving." He said, "Can I see the registration to your car?" And she said, "No." He said, "Well, why not?" And so the little lady said, "Well, it's not my car. I stole it." And she said, "And on top of that, the owner, I chopped him up and put him in the trunk in some plastic bags." And the little officer, eyes got big round, you know, and just started backing away from the car. And he said, "Ma'am, just stay right there." So he went back to his patrol car and he called for some backup where the commanding officer pulled up, and he eased up to the car with his gun half drawn, and he said, "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to step out of this car just a minute." She said, "Certainly, officer." And so she stepped out, and she said, "Is there a problem?" And he said, "Well, this officer says you've killed somebody. I'm going to need to take a look in that trunk." She said, "Well, certainly, officer." So she opened the trunk, and wasn't a thing in the world in the trunk. And she said, "What's the problem now?" And he said, "Well, can I see your driver's license?" And so she fished around in her pocketbook, you know, and she produced her driver's license. And he said, "Well, ma'am, my officer said that you didn't have a driver's license." She said, "Well, here they are." And he said, "Well, ma'am, can I see the registration to your car?" And she said, "Certainly." She went and got the registration and handed it to the officer. He said, "Ma'am, I'm just real confused. My officer said you didn't have any driver's license, you didn't have any registration, and you'd killed a man. What's going on?" She looked up at him and she said, "I bet that old sorry so-and-so told you I was speeding too."